So I am really excited to have a good friend who I've known for many years now as a guest on the podcast today to talk about probably one of the most taboo subjects that should not be taboo. And no, it's not sex. The other one that people probably are even more uncomfortable talking about, and that is money and finances. And so the person I have brought on to talk to you about that today is Molly. So, Molly, for people who don't know who you are, can you give us a introduction?
Sure. So before we get started, my pronouns are they and she. Like to always kind of normalize that in the world here. But I'm a multi hyphenate, like so many of us. But I'm here today, like you said, to talk about money. So, what do I do on the money end? I empower creatives to be unafraid of financial decisions. We do that through financial literacy, and I empower business owners to run profitable businesses that allow them to have freedom and choice through my business coaching end. So, and there's of course financial planning involved, but everything is unique to each client based on their goals and values, because I do not believe there is one financial method of success for everybody.
Awesome. And I'm going to probe you on this because I know you. So for those people who maybe don't know you, so Molly is not just a financial consultant and coach. They are also a creative themselves too. So give people a bit of
Yeah.
bit of the lowdown on what else you do.
Yeah, so I've spent the last 20 years working in creative industries. For the last 4 years, I've been really with my elopement photography business and birth photography business. So, Outdoor Chronicles on Instagram. Photographer for longer than that, but I'm going to say 4 years. That's like the steady, we got serious mode. And before that, I worked primarily in theater and the performing music world, but again, primarily theater. So I spent 9 years in executive leadership within arts organizations, running budgets from $500,000 to $3 million, while always keeping art and art creation. I think that's the key there at the core. And that has informed so much everything. It has informed everything I do with consulting for creatives.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with I'm going to throw you in at the deep end with a maybe challenging question. I don't know. Um, because as you know, one of the kind of key themes of this podcast is around sustainability. And for anyone who's listened to other episodes where I talk about sustainability or read some of the blogs that I've written, sustainability is not just about eco-conscious. It has so many different facets to it. And one of those is economic sustainability. So what does the term like economical sustainability or financial sustainability mean to you?
Yeah, I love that you started it. And I like that you are prefacing with saying economic sustainability and financial sustainability. But I also want to say this is just sustainability in general, even without that, because I think it does inform all the other eco society. For me, there's two aspects, but I'm going to go big first. It's about having a sustainable community. The economy is built on individuals. Yes, there's big businesses, but change happens on the small. So when I think about economic and financial sustainability, I think about what can we do in our own societies to make sure they stay financially strong. So it's not the Amazons, it's not the like select billionaire, let's say, who's making all the decisions, because unfortunately money does equal power, but you can have a lot of power by how you spend your money. So what are the ways to me that means? It means buying mostly local, whenever possible. It means hiring local. So for me and my business, even if there might be some bang up person who lives, in California, I really like to pay people in my community, because when I pay people in my community, that money goes back into the community. They're purchasing within the community. They're paying taxes in the community. It's a very big picture thing. So buying local, eating local, donating locally, volunteering locally. So These are big topics when it comes to economic sustainability. I think without that priority, that's how small communities end up getting pushed to the side. And a lot of small business owners end up having trouble and maybe even going the wayside when those priorities aren't at the front and center. Financial sustainability also is on the individual level, of course. It's being able to sustain yourself, reach your goals, make sure your business is sustainable. Because many people have big businesses that are running in the red, but what can you strategically do to make sure that the goals of your business and the goals you have in life continue to be reached? And that's what makes it sustainable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as you touched on, it's such a huge topic, and all these different things, economic sustainability feeds into other pillars. You can't have a single thing in isolation. But I guess, we started talking about, yeah, finances. Why do you think this is such a uncomfortable and taboo topic for a lot of people, but especially in the creative field? It seems like we're making art, we're not making money.
Yeah. I think there's so much that can go into this. Like you said, it is easier to talk about sex than it is to talk about money. I work with clients who make anywhere from $27,000 on a fixed income to $375,000. And I'm going to say both ends of the spectrum have the same taboo mentality. And what's really funny to me, though, is that people on the lower end of the spectrum are actually more open to talking about money than people at the higher end of the spectrum. So that leads me to believe, why is that? It might be a community support thing. It might be hey, I don't have anything, so I'm going to talk about it. But I think the deeper issue is that we have at some point made money equal what our value is as a person. And I think language matters. You've probably heard the term your net worth thrown around, right? What is the value of your assets minus your what you owe, your liabilities? And I hate that it's your net worth, but I think that is very indicative of why money is taboo, because if we're saying your net worth, we're saying your value is in what financially you are. I much prefer to use other terminology like financial net worth, the net worth of, whatever, but not your. The other thing, aside from like what your value might be in society, I think there's one on the higher end. I think there's an embarrassment of riches. So people who are doing well don't really want to show it off, especially in the arts field, because in the arts field as creatives, we're like, do it for the art, don't do it for the money. Because at some point societally, we've also said, if you have a paycheck, if you're earning money from a job, you're not doing it because you like it. No, you're just doing it for the money. You do your art because you like it. So any artist that is doing well off financially might feel embarrassed at how well they're doing, and oh, did I sell out to the man? That kind of thinking. And lastly, as creatives, there's also this limited scarcity mindset. In the other end of the spectrum, one, you can be financially successful, but many people who are going into the arts when they're, let's say, teens and maybe thinking maybe this is a career I want to do, everybody always says don't do it unless you can picture yourself doing something else. So because everybody else is telling you to think small, I think artists think small and they don't want to. Maybe it's a fear of thinking big. Maybe it's not knowing it's possible. Maybe also this thinking that you can't be creative and financially responsible. Like, I'm a creative, I'm not a numbers person, when you can absolutely be both. I train people all the time to be creative business people. But I think it's just a societal imprint.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes me think there that, the words, these shouldn't be oxymoron, but creative and business in the same thing, which for so many people they are. It's either, I'm a struggling artist or I'm a successful business person. And this idea that they're not mutually exclusive, that they can be, and that, yeah, they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think about, the business people I work with, who say, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous. You're so good as an artist," or "I wish I could do this." And I see the creative people I work with who come to me for a variety of reasons, but it's like, maybe they don't even want to, they don't voice that they want to be better at business. But they're like, I just feel lost. They have a desire. Both these things, the creative work, the art, and the business side and financial literacy take work. They're just practice. Everything can be learned, right? The artist didn't learn how to do their art overnight. They practiced. The photographer learned how to use light and what focal distance to use, The business person can take an art class and draw, but they went to school, they did their math, maybe they didn't go to school for it and they just researched a lot on how to best support their business. So they're not mutually exclusive. They're just skills to be learned.
So I guess leading on from that is something that you and I have talked about, ranted about, probably is a good way of saying this, in personal conversations. And I see this going around in so many industries now, not just photography, but I see it in coaching, I see it in creative businesses in general. And it's this six-figure business buzzword, the thing of like, this is what people use to sell courses. It's what people use to say, oh, I'm successful because I made six figures. And for me, I'm just like, why is six figures such a big deal? And what does that even mean? Like, that you made six figures? Like, how does that mean you're a success? Like, how do you feel about that whole
It doesn't
six-figure
mean
thing?
anything. It doesn't mean anything. And you're right. It's a buzzword. I mean, the other buzzwords probably people have heard, right? Six-figure business, charge your worth, work only X number of hours a week, make money doing your passion, make money while you sleep, right? They're all of the same kind. And they mean nothing. When people see six-figure business, oh, and there's also a time limit usually. Make it six figures in 4 months. Right? As if it's going to be easy overnight. And there is this very capitalistic thinking of like, it can just happen. It's magical. But what does six figures mean? $999,000? Like, that's a pretty big gap there. And also, you can absolutely have a six-figure business, let's say $250,000 worth of revenue every year, but your expenses could be $300,000. So your business could be six figures and making zero money and being in the red. So this buzzword has a lot of attraction to it. I think it's meant to stir up envy in people. Envy and fear are kind of what drive a lot of our base primal instincts that we have as humans. So yeah, it means absolutely nothing. As to why it is a thing, I was doing some research about this recently, actually, to figure out when did the $100,000 thing become a thing. And the first time I kind of see it alluded to is actually in post-World War II era. So where it was like the goal was make $100,000 salary. And obviously cost of living was way lower at that point in time. So yeah, you'd be living like a millionaire. And then this six-figure business, I think I saw it for the first time maybe in 2010. Like, it was definitely in the online space, maybe like a little bit in the MLM space, maybe in the girl boss era. And I think it started out good as a goal, but it's a very simplistic goal that doesn't mean anything without any context.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, all of that. And we actually were talking about this at home last night, on also like who first came up with it. Because for me, like, earning a six-figure business, or having a six-figure business, having a six-figure income in one country means something so different to in another country. Even just when you look at the differences between, say, the US, the UK, and Europe, where costs of living are different, taxes are so totally different. Like, here I pay about 40% of all of my income goes in different ways to taxes. And it's like just in general, the average what people earn is so different country to country, yet it's almost like that context, the nuance is removed of, like, oh yeah, but I follow all these gurus in this country who are like six figures, and it's like, yeah, but is that even a goal I want to aim for? Is that even realistic for where I live? And I'm never going to say something isn't realistic, but it's like, what is your motivation except to say, oh yeah, I turned over six figures? Like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I
it's
think
just, there's so much.
there's so much in it. And I think again, it's a nice number, but there's no forward thinking, right? There's like, ooh, shiny. That looks shiny to me without actually looking at what it means. Like you said, cost of living varies so greatly. If you live in a major city, you might be paying $3,000, or euro for a flat, if your mortgage is going to vary. I mean, that's a whole other thing, mortgage versus rent versus owning a car versus leasing, right? These are all decisions that people make. But I'm going to tell you, if you are, let's say you're a mom and you have a partner and you want to support your whole family with your business, a six-figure business is not going to do it. In the US, you're going to have, I'll say in the US, $100,000 salary is probably going to be about $40,000 take home. So can you actually sustain your whole family on $40,000? No. Now, having $100,000 take home, totally different story. And that's where, all of these considerations come into play. A big thing that I see with the folks that come to me, people come to me for a variety of reasons, but a big one is they haven't properly planned for their taxes because they just didn't think about it, or not planning their expenses appropriately. Maybe it's like, oh, but I own this computer. I bought it for myself, but I use it for business. Well, your business is going to have to replace that computer at some point. You have to plan for that. The other one is health insurance and retirement. These are all things that a normal 9 to 5 W-2 job, that's the US tax form. But let's say a normal 9 to 5 job is going to give you those benefits that not only help you now, help you get your take home salary to do your expenses for now, pay for your vacations, but it's typically going to at least supplement your health insurance, which in the US, we could go into that. Yeah, you can pay as little as $100 a month, but there's also an income limitation there. So, like, if you want to pay $100 for your health insurance, you have to keep in New York, you have to keep your income below 56, I think. So you might not even want that $100,000 take home, because then your health insurance costs might cost anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. So but like if you work for a company, they pay for that. Maybe they give you a pension. Maybe they help you save for your retirement. When you work for yourself, it's not just your take home today. It is, the business have to account for all of that. So that's what I usually help people do, is kind of like, okay, we need to treat your business as a business. Yeah, you're an artist, but you're a business first. If you're looking for this to take care of you, you need to teach your business to take care of you.
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads very neatly onto another topic that we have talked about before. And that is this whole thing of, like, you've made it either when you make six figures, or it's when you quit your day job and go full time as an entrepreneur. Yeah, I guess I have two questions around this, which is like, well, how do you feel about this whole thing of like, you should the goal should be to quit your day job and go full time? And then kind of on from that, what do people need to consider if they are someone who has, say, another job that is employed and they're thinking about becoming full-time self-employed? Like, is it just that easy from switching? Like, what things do you need to think about?
No, a big mistake I see in some of the online forums is like, people ask this all the time, when do you know? And some of the answers that people give are very naive. And I'm going to bet that most of the people that give these answers and maybe follow it do end up in financial difficulty. But they say, when I make the same salary, when I can replace my salary.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they mean their business is making 67,000. Let's say they make 67,000 from their work. It's not the same. I think the other dangerous thing is generalizing that the goal is the same for everybody and that success means the same thing to everybody. Speaking for myself, I have done the total workaholic thing, earning, I've earned, I'm going to just be transparent here, $180,000 in a year ish, not all take home between my business and some other things that I'm doing. And that was the worst year of my life. Like, that was just I was so busy. I wasn't seeing anybody. I wasn't hiking. I was sick all the time. And I was stressed because the other thing is, because I had no time for my personal life, my expenses actually went way up. My savings rate was less, which is bizarre. You wouldn't think that. But I had to pay for things and pay for conveniences because between the three businesses I was running, it was just too much, you know? So, this goal of replacing your salary or quitting your day job, I think is a dangerous one. I think I'm not going to be the person that says wait to quit your day job because of financial security. There are definitely times where, you know, going all in on your business, on your passion is absolutely worthwhile, 100%. And I would say that goal is determined by, like, does it make you sick to go to work, to your day job? In that case, like, you don't like it, you don't want to work it. Yeah, let's absolutely quit it and build that business. Let's do it responsibly. Let's make sure that we have the runway that you need, that you are prepared. Those are things that I'll help you with. But for some people, they love their job. You know, maybe they love everything that they do. I mean, like I said, I run three businesses. I have this business, I have the photography business, and I also do still arts consulting in the business world for arts organizations. I don't know if that made sense just now. I think I just spoke weird. But I love all three of them, and they're not the same. And I don't want to give up one of them. I don't want to replace them with something else. So I think there's so many people out there that say, well, everybody's telling me I should only do one thing. You don't have to do just one thing. So, and also having a day job can be a really beautiful way to strengthen your business. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make with their business is, well, there's a couple mistakes, but they don't really understand the numbers, but they also have this mentality of like, well, I've invested my personal money. I'll just like pay myself back from my business. So their business, even when it's only making $5,000, isn't teaching you to pay you. But if your goal is to replace another job, you need to start when your business is small, how to pay, how to account for taxes, how to account for expenses, and have a plan in place. And I think even if you don't plan on leaving your day job, that's what you should do. But having your day job is a really wonderful way to allow you the freedom to build your business without the additional financial stress of trying to take care of yourself or your family. Both of us are a little bit older. You know, I think it's one thing when you're 22, 23, 24, you know, maybe you have lots of roommates.
I'm still 21. Don't tell anyone.
You want to be 21 again? I never want to be 21 again.
No. No, I don't really. Maybe 29.
Yeah, 29, maybe.
Yeah.
I like the
So,
30s.
so
I
carry
like
on.
the late 30s. The late 30s
Yeah.
are wonderful. But, you know, when you're younger, there's a lot more financial flexibility that you can get away with. As you get older, just needs increase, you know, whether it's health, whether it's assets, whether it's taking care of somebody else, whether it's a child or a parent, you know, these are all big things. And I think having a day job can help relieve the financial stress while you chase that thing that makes you really, really, really happy.
Yeah. And because I hate it when the fact that someone has another job that they're made to feel sometimes shame around that the the day job is vilified, or that somehow you're a failure because you also have a part-time job. But I know from like my own background as well, like I mean I reduced the hours that I was working in employment, but honestly I don't know if I would have the same business that I have now if I'd have just quit my job earlier, because it really meant, and I see this for a lot of people, having that financial security of knowing that I had the income from my job meant that I could say no to doing family shoots, doing maternity, newborn stuff that I just hate it. No, would never want to do it. But if I'd have just gone full time in my business too early, then there is that thing of, well, shit, I need to make money somehow. So either I dilute what I'm building and just take any booking I can, work with clients, whether they're aligned or not, or and I think this is where having another job can be so great, because it takes that pressure off to just say, do you know what, I know my bases are covered. So it means that, while especially not just in the early years of when you're growing your business, but especially when you're sort of finding out where you are, where you want to work, and especially with a lot of the clients I work with, really working out what your niche is, it means that you haven't got to do stuff that you don't want to do. You can literally just build what you want, knowing that, yeah, you don't have to say yes to work just for the money. So I don't, yeah, sometimes when I see this idea of like, oh, you shouldn't have another job, or that it's, I remember some of the messaging when I was starting my business around like, oh, you should never take photographers seriously if it's not their main job. And I was like, I don't understand the logic behind that, because like, it doesn't mean they're any less good at what they do. Do they have other priorities? Possibly, but even someone who's a full-time photographer has other priorities. It's just like, just because somebody does something part-time, they're no less legitimate. And those arguments just always, they're just, I don't,
They're BS. They're
everyone's opinion,
absolute
but
bull. It doesn't. It means.
yeah,
I think again, there's this like tie in your worth, right? A worthy person, has a
yeah,
great job that they only work one, and they do that full time. I'm not even going to go into like working 4 hours a week, because people do love when people work hard. Work hard equals money. So which, if you're not looking at this, absolutely, I'm saying that with sarcasm, because there's a lot of people who make lots of money who don't work very hard, and there's a lot of people who work their butts off and don't have arguably a lot of money. So I think that's a BS statement right there too. But yeah, I hate when people say, like, think that somebody doing something part-time or having a quote unquote side hustle, right, that makes it any less valid, any less impactful on communities. I mean, going to your very first question of how do we have an economically sustainable community? I mean, there's this lovely little shop. I live in a town of 5,000 people, so it's in the middle of nowhere. It's tiny. There's this little shop in the neighboring town. It's only open Friday through Sundays. It's it's a shop. It's an in-person shop, but they don't run it full time. I mean, they're probably working their butts off, right? But it's not open 5 days a week from 9 to 5, or 6 days a week. It's 3 days a week. Is that business any less valid? No, it absolutely not. It goes to, I hate also this term success, because people have ideas of what they think success means to everybody else, when success is so uniquely based on your own goals. But one thing that I might say is a metric of success goes to what you were saying, is the ability to say no. I have also done the thing where I take on work that is not the best fit. I've definitely done this in the photography world, and I have regretted it every single time. I have never had an experience where I had that gut feeling that I shouldn't do this, or it wasn't right. They weren't really aligned clients. It wasn't really something I was jazzed to do, where it ended up tricking me and being like, oh, wow, that was awesome every single time. So now I feel very good about saying no. And I think, no, I don't even think, I know you said this to me, is every time you say no, you make room for a yes that is the right alignment. And yeah, in those early years, that first year, maybe second year, maybe third year, maybe first 5 years, maybe first 10 years. Because again, there is no right timeline of building your business. That day job, that part-time job, whatever, if it gives you the ability to say no so that you can keep being happy at this part-time thing that you're doing, or the business you're building, I think that'll keep you happy.
yeah. And like the saying no part for so many people, and I see this when I work with people on their niching, is that's such a like a fear driven response of like, I have to say yes to everything because I need to make sure that, financially, especially coming out of COVID times, where, for so many people who were in business before COVID, that, stuff dried up for a lot of people. And so it was that kind of that scarcity mindset of, okay, well, I don't know when the next stuff's coming in, so like I need to just say yes to everything to make sure that I have money coming in. But certainly for me, one of the things that I think is crucial on that is to actually just take a step back, take the emotions out of it, and just knowing your numbers, like knowing how many bookings do you actually need, how many bookings do you actually want, and want and need can be sometimes two different things. So actually looking at those numbers, because I feel, and I don't know if this is something you experienced in your financial consulting, but that so many people don't know those basic things of what do I want to earn, what do I need to earn, and how much do I want to work, and looking at how all of those things fit together.
Absolutely. I see this on the personal financial coaching that even is not business owners. I mean, you hear about it all the time, people spending beyond their means, but they honestly, I'm going to say the people I work with, any kind of financial difficulty they're in is not because of frivolous spending. It's simply an unawareness of things that happen, and it's surprises, and also not knowing your goals. When you don't know your goals, you don't know what you're working for. And I think I'm about to tangent a little bit, so just putting putting that out there as well. Can you actually, before I tangent, can you repeat the question so I don't tangent too far? You can X out this part.
I don't even remember what the question is now, because it was just kind of what came to my head. Oh yeah, it's around whether you see people in your coaching as well, because I come across this where people don't know the difference between what they need to earn,
And
what
what
they
they want.
want to earn, but also how much they want to work.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with on the business end and answer that pretty directly. Absolutely, I see all the time that people don't know what they need. Like I said in the beginning, people come to me usually because they've realized, oh my gosh, I owe $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of taxes. Maybe it's $2,000 in taxes. How the heck am I going to pay this? Or, or they're we've talked about, I'm bringing in $100,000. Where's my money? Why aren't I seeing it? And there's a variety of reasons this happens. Like maybe people are combining their personal and business finances. They haven't properly separated. Maybe it's a not having a proper accounting system or financial habit system in place. I work very closely with creatives to kind of again, like I said, this is a skill that has to be taught. So, you're going to have weekly things that you should do. You're going to have things you should do every 2 weeks, every month, so that you stay on top of your numbers. I think at this point, most people understand what cost of doing business is, or they've at least seen CODB floating around, but they don't really understand the nitty gritty of it. They don't understand maybe how it relates to them, and so people might say, okay, I want to do 18 shoots in a year. Let's say I want to do 18 elopements in a year, but I actually don't know how much I need to for my life. I don't know how much I spend on groceries. I don't really know how much I spend in a week. Oh yeah, and I like to go on vacation every now and then. And I guess I might need another camera because I was told that I should have a dual slot camera. These are all the things that somebody might go through in the early stages of building their business. And they think what their cost of doing business is simply what they've spent. But your cost of doing business is so much more. As I mentioned earlier, it is taking into account your taxes and how much you owe, whether it's 25%, 42%, 51%. I mean, like you said, in Europe, the taxes are quite high. Now, is that made up for in the US? We pay really high health insurance, but understanding that, it's understanding benefits, retirement benefits. It's understanding what other type of outsourcing, what might that look like? Your cost of doing business. You might edit all of your galleries right now by yourself, but if you're wanting to do 18 elopements in a year, is it actually realistic given maybe a shortened, maybe 6-month, 5-month, 4-month wedding season to do 18 bookings and get all of your galleries out, let's say 6 weeks on average? I am seeing a trend in the industry world where we're seeing people give more, like 14 weeks to deliver photos to people. I'm seeing that increase. But you probably don't want to do that as somebody who's a service-based business owner. You want to kind of make your clients happy. But let's say a 6 week, is it feasible for you to actually do that and still be happy and maintain your health, whether it's mental or physical? You have to think about the time of when your work is happening and how many hours it actually is, because you might, like I said, 18 bookings in a year sounds really nice when it's over the course of 12 months, you know, but once you shrink it, and again, what is your time worth as well? You know, like how many hours do you want to work? I don't see a lot of people taking that into account. I think I read a metric recently that for every hour of photography, it's 12 hours on the back end, which to me sounds absolutely realistic. Between blogging, doing your SEO work, marketing, doing your accounting work that, yes, I know everybody who's listening to this is going to be doing from now on very religiously, you know, to the editing, you know, it's a lot of work. So I know I tangented there a little bit, but the essence is your cost of doing business, knowing how much you need to charge, isn't the straightforward, how much do I want to make divided by how many bookings. It's much more intricate than that. You have to look at what your business needs to make, and then what you need to look at is what you, the individual, need to make. Even people in W-2 jobs, or maybe they're photographers who work for a company, I do the same exact work with. Often we go backwards and we create an income goal. I say, listen, to meet all of these things that you have, the retirement goals, the savings goals, you want to go traveling, you want to maybe save up for a car, maybe pets. Pets are getting really expensive. I know our food, we have 3 dogs. One bag of dog food in the last year and a half has gone from $40 to $95. So planning appropriately for that, planning for emergency pet surgeries, you know, all of these things make your calculation unique to you and therefore your business. Maybe I sort of answered that. I don't know, but it was hopefully a good tangent.
No, absolutely. Totally relevant. Now, because it's something that I sometimes have, you know, in different ways. It comes into conversations I have with some of my private coaching clients where they'll come and they'll say, my goal is to earn this figure next year. And then we look at their numbers and it's like, but at the same time, they're saying like, but I'm overwhelmed. Like this year was too much. I definitely need to do less clients. And you're like, well, something's not quite right in all of this. It's like, firstly, sometimes my question is like, where did this number come from? Like, how did you work it out? So many times it's like, oh, it was just a nice round number. I just picked it out of the top of my head. Very rarely is that number thought about, or I can see, or they could justify that number. And then it also, it doesn't take into account so often, like you said there, looking actually also into the future. So it's not just about the taking care of your financial needs now, paying all your bills, but actually, especially for those of us who maybe are slightly getting old, not
Only
me,
slightly.
obviously.
And also, again,
Yeah, it's but those thoughts of like, well, actually, how much longer do I want to keep doing this, or do I need to stop making sure that, because when you're younger, you're like, pension, what?
yeah.
Don't need to think about that now. And at some point, you're like, maybe those sorts of things should also be coming into consideration. That are just, no one ever talks about things like that either. Like it's all about, you know, I made this much money, but say, oh, did you pay into a pension? How's your health? How much time did you have with your family? It's, so much.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this, you know, privately as well, is how much time and hours are worked. And I'm always telling, my friends tease me. They're like, Molly, you have so many ideas and you're doing all the things. How do you do it? And the thing is, I do it at the expense of myself. And you and I have talked offline where I'm just like, I can't keep doing this, but I have these ideas. And the reason I love talking with you, because you're like, okay, Molly, you just told me a big idea. How many hours do you actually have? And I'm like, 30 minutes. I have 30 minutes. So, because I think too, you know, like there's other priorities that we have in life that are really important. And yeah, that's all. It's there's a lot there to think about. When it comes to how to plan appropriately on what salary you need, there are some metrics that I usually say are like rough, good metrics for people to say, yeah, you're financially healthy, you're in a good place. On the personal end, I'll say, okay, like maybe we have like a 15% savings rate. Maybe we've got, if you're an entrepreneur and your only business is you, I say at least 12 months of emergency savings. It takes a while to get there. I don't want everybody to freak out. I'm happy if you have $1,000 in emergency savings. Just an aside, 66% of people in the US can't afford a $400 emergency. I don't know what the number is in the UK or in some of the countries in Europe, but I know in the US people can't afford a $400 emergency, and I've seen it. Like I said, I've got this client, and it doesn't matter how much money you make, which tells me it's about financial habits and not about how much money you make. So when people come to you and say, I want to make $80,000, $100,000, we have to know the whys, because when you're vague like that, you might fall into lifestyle inflation, and you might actually not be more financially flexible than you think you might be. Or, as we've alluded to, your time, like your time as a human is worth something. And this is, I guess, going back to the $100,000 business or six-figure business. I think these coaches, these people who sell these courses of how to do this in 4 months, they're placing financial worth and financial goals over everything else. I would say, what are better goals for you? I would say that's a really simplistic goal, maybe an early goal, but as you get into this business, you might be like, I want to do more of this. I want to be more creative in this way. Because I think it just like, it's very dangerous to put that worth there and put a financial number over every other goal that you might have. Some other metrics that like are good for financial health, like I said, at least a 15% savings rate that includes your retirement, 6 to 12 months emergency savings, looking at your debt, keeping it under 35%. That's easier to do in Europe, I'll say, because there's a lot of restrictions in place to obtain debt, and having those investment accounts. So and those are ways to kind of keep you on top and aware of what's going on, if you keep those metrics no matter how much you're making. And the other thing that I wanted to mention as well that's dangerous, and I already mentioned, you can have a six-figure business that's running in the red. And you can just tell people you have a six-figure business and feel real nice about it and be really stressed at home and crying in your bed. But I've mentioned that I have clients in a variety of financial situations. One of my highest earning clients that I have isn't any more well off with their own finances than the other person, because again, their expenses are much larger and not in their personal world. They take care of their parents, because that's where different cultures come into play as well, that I think we don't often think about as humans in a primarily like European white like society, where maybe when you think of dependence, you think of your offspring, you think about your children, and you think, okay, 18 years, maybe some college. But there's a lot of communities and a lot of cultures where taking care of your parents is expected, is important, whether they live with you, maybe you buy a house for them, maybe you pay for their grocery, so I just want to say again, this is what makes every situation unique.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've touched on this, but I guess if you could like simplify it, what are some of the most common financial mistakes that you see like with creatives in the creative business space?
Yeah, in the creative business space, I'm going to make a list. Let's do a list.
Yeah.
Not having a plan. And with, I work with people on business plans. It's not going to be the thing when you Google, what is a business plan? We work on business plans that are unique to you and that feed you, because a business plan should be a guide that you can refer to in a language that makes sense to you. With that business plan, what I really mean is having goals and steps towards meeting those goals, along with knowing what your barriers are. So we do this for your finances, but I'll tell you that any goal you have is a financial goal. So that's why it matters when it comes to the business plan for creatives. Another mistake is reactive budgeting versus proactive budgeting. Reactive budgeting looks like, I have this amount of money right now. This is what I can spend right now. I'll use an example, actually not from the photography world, but from the theater world. So let's say you're a lighting designer. I have a client who's a designer. You get paid fees by show. And most, I would say, people in the theater world haven't been taught to think of themselves as businesses. So they think, oh, I earned this money. So they say, okay, this month I earned $1,200, and they treat it as that. But then they want to get a studio later on, or maybe a co-working space, or maybe they have supplies that they want to buy. Then all of a sudden they find themselves not having the money because they've budgeted reactively. When we budget proactively, we say, okay, what are the things we want in a year? How much do we need to make, and work backwards into that? Maybe it's not even how much do we want to make. It means how much can I spend on my personal life at that point. Maybe it's changing your personal life to fit with your business goal life. Oh, maybe it's maybe the biggest mistake of all is commingling your business finances with your personal finances. And this is very, very dangerous, actually dangerous on a legal liability front. But on a personal confusion front, it's overwhelming. Imagine trying to do your bookkeeping and you have to decide, was that gas stop for my business or was that for me? Is this thing that I bought at the store, the grocery store, I bought stacks for my couple, or was that groceries for me? So having two separate bank accounts, having two separate cards, knowing, especially if you still have a day job, being able to separate what pay is from your day job versus what pay is from your business, clarifying those two is really of the utmost importance. There's a thing in the US, and I believe there's a similar thing in the the EU as well, called piercing the corporate veil. So even if you have a business and you are signed up as a business in the US, maybe you're an LLC, limited liability corporation, if you commingle your finances, if you use the same credit card, if you have things in the same bank accounts, and you get sued, they can still go after your personal assets, even though you're declared a business. Because what they will say is, well, you said you're a business, but you don't treat yourself as a business. All your finances are commingled, so we'll just come after it all. So I do say it's very dangerous for you. And then, of course, insurance, all of that stuff as well. So commingling, and therefore maybe even not understanding your numbers because it's confusing. And then I would say, I mentioned earlier, overlooking certain expenses like your taxes, your healthcare, things like that. And maybe lastly, I would say not surrounding yourself with a community. Creatives love to go at it themselves and say, I can do this by myself. And I would say not having a community or people to talk to get expertise from would also be a big mistake when building your business. So I don't know how many bullets that was, 5, 6, 7. But I would say those are the top mistakes that I see.
Okay, cool. And I guess leading on from that, like if you were going to give people I don't know, say 3 pieces of advice on how to be more financially literate or confident in their finances in their business, what would that be? And I know this is putting you on the spot, but
Yeah. I would start easy. Open up a Google Sheet and have a tab where you record, your income and that you're making from your business every time. Maybe even note the payment plan and the dates that you're getting that income so that you can learn how your business flows. When I work with people, we work on 18-month projections because that helps keep people relaxed, remembering the cycles of their business. Every time you make a purchase for your business, whether it's in your notes app, on your phone, on the Google Sheets, Google Sheets you can open up on your phone, even note it there, and review your credit card statements weekly. Even if you didn't make a purchase, just double check, make sure there wasn't an automatic something that happened, and that will start to build financial literacy.
awesome. Yeah, love it. Love all of it.
That said, for anybody who wants the full workup of what you want to do, there is a freebie. So there's a freebie on my website. Kat, I think, you'll be talking about that maybe, but that gives you kind of like a breakdown of what do you do on a weekly basis, what do you do on a monthly basis, and what do you do on a yearly basis. And that will give you the full picture. I just gave you absolute basics just now.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, and I'll drop all the links and stuff in the show notes of this so that people can go find it easily. Yeah, I guess that's kind of all the questions I'd written down. Is there anything else like that comes to your mind that you're like, oh, I'd love to talk about that?
You know, I think the only thing, again, to leave people with something really solid, because I have been a little wishy washy and said everything is independent, everything is unique to you. But if you are looking for general rules, I would love to give general rules for financial health and general rules for how to divide up your income, your revenue that comes into your business, if that's okay with you. So
Yeah.
for your business, if you are starting this proactive budgeting or want to get more of a handle on things, everything that comes in, this is a take on the profit first mentality, a little bit slightly different. If you're in the US, 25% to taxes, 10% into a business, long-term business savings account, 15% into an expenses account. So long-term business savings would be used on things like computers, purchases, cameras, things that are purchased every couple of years. So that's 10%, 15% into expenses. That's everything that you spend within a year. So phone bills, computer bills, SD cards, smaller things, and 50% into a salary bucket. And that salary bucket isn't what you take home. It's a salary bucket from where you draw your salary, because you're going to determine your salary based on what you need on your personal end. It might be $1,800, it might be $1,000, it might be $3,000. But the idea is that 50% salary bucket will continue to grow over time. Where I would love it if you had 18 months or 2 years worth of salary in there eventually, because your business will grow and change. And to be able to make those strategic decisions and have time for them, being able to ensure you continue to pay yourself a salary while you reduce other aspects is really important. So that would be my general business rule. And again, I'm happy with everybody just making even one unique change and one unique, change the percentages to see what you feel fit. On the personal end, I mentioned this, a 15% savings rate of your gross income. So your net income is after your personal taxes have been taken out and any sort of pre-tax expense. So 15% savings of your gross, 6 months of emergency savings to 12 months, like I said, a little wishy-washy. In the US, a credit score of 750 or above. The reason that's important is because as a solopreneur, your credit score is the only thing that will tell lenders, let's say you want to buy a house, want to buy a car, how reliable you are. In the normal 9 to 5 world, you usually have paperwork from your employer saying, yes, you get a paycheck, but you don't have that when you're a solopreneur. So they only look at your credit score. So credit score over 750, debt to income ratio. So your monthly debt payments compared to your monthly income, keeping that under 35%. Credit usage, keeping that under 35%, and having at least 2 investment accounts, one for retirement and one for midterm savings. So those would be my metrics that I'd love to leave people with.
Awesome. I'll have to rewatch and I'll see if I can make a note of those and eventually hopefully put a blog post as well to go together with this, because yeah, I think I think we've talked about this, that I have the profit first system that I implement, massive game changer, because it means you can't overspend. That's the biggest thing. It's when everything used to go into one account, you're like, oh brilliant, my account's got this much money in it, when you're like, well actually a lot of that is taxes, some of that's for emergency funds, some of that's for paying me. So getting used to not just having everything also, I think, in one account, certainly from me, that would be the biggest advice I would give to anyone, is to do just like you said, Molly, and split it up as soon as those payments come in, split them into different allocations, into different other accounts, because you suddenly see the reality of how much you're really earning.
Yeah.
like, and how much you have to spend. And at the start, it can be really quite sobering, I think, when you suddenly you get a payment come in for $10,000, a balance payment from a client, and then as soon as like, well, 50% goes into this, 35% goes into my tax fund, this goes into this, you're like literally going, okay, well that leaves me with like 2,000 just to spend on my day-to-day expenses. So it's not. It goes from being a lot of money to being actually it's not that much money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like very quickly. But it means that you don't get into those things of, like you said, ending up having to get credit, having to get debt because you overspend or you get a tax bill that you weren't prepared for. So yeah, I think that's just the best advice is to do those different payment, whatever you say, different accounts just to split your income. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's so
Amazing.
many, I used to recommend to people to actually open up different bank accounts at different banks for certain things, like emergency savings in one that you couldn't touch, or would take a 2-day transfer, for example. But there's also, if you don't feel so comfortable with that, there's so many online banks these days where you can create envelopes or buckets. And for example, one of my accounts that I use, everything that goes into, I've set up the rule. So it gets deposited from my CRM. I use Dubsado, and it goes into my bank account, which is Ally, and it automatically does the division for me. So I don't even need to think about it. I just open it up. I'm like, ooh, how much can I spend on buying a new camera this year?
That's amazing.
It's
Yeah,
really,
that is really good. Now, I still have to do all of those calculations myself. So once a month or every couple of weeks, depending on how many payments have come in, it's like, right, let's sit down, let's just. But it also means that I'm completely aware of how much is coming in, how much is going into different pot, to just, yeah, to just sit there and go, right, let's quickly put this in these different spaces. Yeah, I have exactly the same. I have a main checking account and then just linked. That's the great thing with online banking, I feel like these days as well. Just linked different savings account. One's called tax, one's called salary, one's called profit. Just pushing it out into the different ones. And then it's like, what's left? Okay, that's the money I have to cover my day-to-day expenses. I think that's especially great when you're looking at doing things like outsourcing, because then as well, like, can I afford to bring someone in? Because as well, we've touched on money. Sometimes the money is the time that you're buying that time. So that can be outsourcing. And so, well, how much can I afford to outsource? And you're looking at that number in that operating account and going, okay, well, my budget is going to be this. So then obviously you've got all those other questions. Do I need to raise my prices? Do I need to look at, but yeah,
I'm
I think the main
curious.
thing, if we,
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
continue.
no, I was just going to say, if we leave anyone with anything, it's to do this splitting up of the money that comes in.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm curious because I'm sure there's people listening who would love to hear. I mean, they're probably like, oh my God, was Kat always perfect at this? Was Molly always perfect at this? And I would like to just like tell people that I was not always perfect at this. I was really good at doing this for businesses, but for my personal life, I was not good at dividing things out. I was very much like a money hoarder because I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to have money. And I saved everything. And uh and that was actually like a bad thing because I didn't know what I was working for and was very burnt out, because turns out when you start being like, ooh, this is going towards vacation, this is going towards that sofa, this is going towards my pets, you're like much more motivated. So that was my mistake. I'm curious from you, like before you kind of figured out your system, what was that learning curve for you like?
I had a turbulent relationship with money. Like my habits were, and this was even from like going back to university, where as soon as my student loan came in, it was like, brilliant, that money, that number I saw in my bank account, to me, that was, this is how much I have to spend.
Yep.
And that perpetuated as I was in employment, of that money that landed in my bank account each month equaled, this is my spending money each month. And every month I would run it down to zero. Then I would have a credit card. It's like, I'll put that in the credit card, then I don't have to think about it this month. And that was kind of the way, the cycle that I used to be in with money, with finances, to the point where bank statements would come and I wouldn't look at them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't log into online banking because I didn't know. I had no idea how much money I had. I just looked at the start of the month that I had the money coming in, and then it was just like, oh, just spend. It was only it was a few years into running my business where I think I kind of said, like, things started doing better, because also at the start there was that weird thing of, I have an employment job, so I can just, any money that comes into my business I can just spend. That's just money to spend because my needs are taken care of from being employed. And so then when I decided, you know what, I'm leaving that job, I'm going full time. Part of that was sitting down with my coach and saying, right, that's not going to work anymore. So I need to change how I do stuff. They introduced me to Profit First, but it was already just that thing of like, we need to change this relationship with how you deal with money, because it is just this cycle of, and it was that with my business when I had the other job, of like, I just look at how much money was coming in and go, well, that's how much money I've got to spend on a new camera, on signing up for all these different software things, some of which I probably didn't even need, but I was like, well, I've got the money in the bank, so I'll do it. And then as soon as it's like, well, actually, now if I'm not going to be employed and I need to be paying myself from that money, then it's like, I can't do that anymore. And then also, yeah, for me, one of the things that kind of also made me start to think about how I had that relationship with my finances, with my business, was actually the first time I took like proper like charge for a booking quite early on, and they were a bit of a nightmare. And there was that thing as well of like retrospectively going, well, shit, if they want a refund, actually no, it wasn't them, it was further down, because yeah, but it was a client who wanted to cancel, and it was that kind of thing of like, in my cancellation terms I shouldn't have to pay them anything back, but I was like, well, what if they wanted to get lawyers involved or anything like that? And it's like, what if they want that money back, because I don't have it anymore, because I took that deposit, but then I used that, for the general cash flow of the business to pay for shit, because especially with the more traditional weddings that I used to do, it would be sometimes over a year in advance. It's like, that money's not still sitting there.
Yeah.
So it also made me start to think about, well, hang on, what about cash flow? What about these things of like, if I had a complaint from a client where I was like, do you know what, the easiest thing is to give them a partial refund, or even just circumstances where perhaps I have a cancellation. And I did do this one time where there was a cancellation because of, I can't remember exact circumstances, but it was something where I was just like, oh, one of the clients had cancer, and they were changing all of their wedding plans, canceling their destination wedding. And for me, I was like, in this instance, yes, I'm in full right to keep the deposit, but I don't want to. Like, for me, it just didn't feel morally right. And I was like, they're going through a lot of shit. They didn't even expect it back, but I had said to them, I want you to have it back. It was more than enough time for me to resell it, but it was that kind of, just those thoughts of, do I have the money to, I mean, I wouldn't have offered if I didn't have the money to do it, but, just thinking about those things just made me become more aware. But certainly, yeah, at the start, I was very much burying my head in the sand. Whenever money came in, I just saw that as money to spend, not to pay myself because I didn't need to.
Yeah.
My relationship with money, with finances, has changed so much. Also, even just little things. And I mean, it's not really what we were talking about today, but just the difference, and I see this with my coaching clients, of even just being able to say my prices and what I charge out loud to anyone unapologetically. It's like so many people, so a lot of my private clients have this, where when we're talking about finances, we're talking about prices, especially when it's that thing of like, well, this is how much you need. And it's like, well, if you don't want to be doing 50 weddings a year, we're going to have to put those prices up. And they'll go away and they'll do it. And then I'm like, on the next call, they're like, no one's booking me at my higher rates. Should I put them down? I'm like, okay, so tell me, what are your higher rates? And firstly, they can't remember. And they're like, oh, I just put them up, so I can't remember. And it's like, I'm not going to fall for that. But it's like, okay, well, tell me why you're worth that much. And they're like,
Yeah.
And they get really, really awkward. They can't say the number without feeling cringy. And I think it's all linked. Like, when you're confident in your finances and you know your rates, you're also confident in just talking about them and saying, yeah, if you want to book me for 2 days, it's 13,000.
Yeah.
Like, and just if you say it with like, well, it's 5,800 for it's like people just also, if you're apologetic about it, if you can't talk about your money and how much you charge, it's all linked, and it's one of those kind of things that you just have to get comfortable with it, I think.
And I think helping and knowing why you need that money and why your work is worth that money, right? That helps that confidence. But I really appreciate you sharing that story and in so much detail, which was way more than I expected. But I think a lot of people can relate to that. I can tell you that, like, I mean, I wasn't ever the bury my head in the sand person. I was more the very obsessive. I mean, I was 18 years old at university with my spreadsheet that was password protected, making my little like student income, and dividing everything up. And, this is for my books. This is for cigarettes. And I don't smoke anymore, guys, but like, universities sell books, cigarettes, movies, food, rent, I mean, I've always been way too obsessed with it, where letting go was hard. But I think the takeaway here is that financial literacy, financial management, business growth, it all takes time and is a journey. So, like, I don't want anybody out there listening to be like, oh my God, I feel like a failure because I'm not this way yet. Any positive steps, every choice and decision you make today is serving future you. And you don't need to do all of them at once, one stair at a time, not the whole staircase. So I really appreciate you sharing and how many years it took you to get. For myself, like I said, I had that bang up year a couple years ago. It was actually during COVID, which was crazy, but like I said, I was probably working $80 to $100, 80 to 100 hours a week between all of the things I was doing. But and that was definitely scarcity mentality. And now I very happily, sure, I get scared sometimes, but very happily don't make $100,000, because other things are worth more to me. But it can take years to get to a place of confidence in that world.
Definitely. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap it up. So just, people, and I will link these again in the show notes, but for people who are interested to take some next steps on this financial journey, if people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, so my website is Molly Matilda, mmstrategicadvising.com. There's a pop-up, give it like 3-4 seconds on that website. There's a free financial task list for creatives. On the blog, I try to give you really useful, free advice. If you're interested in working in a one-on-one capacity, the things that I offer, I do a one-time financial plan. I'll say most people don't take me up on that because it really is about habits and going, it's commitment to doing the work. But then I also have monthly subscriptions for personal finance as well as business strategy and business finance. And those are all listed on my website.
Awesome. And you have social media as well.
Oh yeah, I do have social media. Why, thank you. Yes, my social media, it's on Instagram. It's Consulting for Creatives. I'm working on being more active over there, but same idea. I try to provide bite-sized bits of advice, nothing too overwhelming in one go.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for that. Let's hope more people are just happy to go away, listen to this, and have a conversation with a colleague, with a partner, and just start talking more about money and finances, and just something that becomes as easy to talk about as what presets you use and what camera you shoot on.
Oh my God, it should absolutely be that easy. That would be the dream.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight.
All right.